Silver and black holes of Las Vegas. This is Joe and Bob here, fans breaking down the NFL, talking today about the Las Vegas Raiders. And Bob, it's still weird not to call them the Oakland Raiders, just telling you that up front. I look at this roster up and down after losing Carr. This feels like an incongruent team. And the reason I say that is Adams is one of the best downfield receivers in the NFL coming out of the vertical system with Green Bay. They ran a vertical system last year, and they brought Myers in to run downfield, who, on paper, based on all of his traits, should be very good in a vertical system, but God knows New England didn't even let him look at it. So, on paper, that's what their receiving core is designed to do. Their quarterback can't. So, what are we doing? Obviously, Josh Jacobs would benefit immensely from having a downfield passing game. Immensely would benefit from it. And some of his biggest games you saw last year were set up by safeties having to be back because Adams hit a big one deep or Waller hit a big one deep. And then all of a sudden, safeties are back, and you give Josh Jacobs time and space, he's going to run your ass over. He's one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So I look at this going, you guys couldn't wait to get rid of Carr because you gave him a stupidly written contract. You had to. And I'm seeing this as a GM that's like hitting panic mode. And again, 16 players on this roster on one-year deals, all of which got signing bonuses, which means if you cut them, you're taking a big cap hit next year. The cap hit penalty this year is what put them in this problem. Mm-hmm. And to repeat it and to not give all those one-year contracts as 2 years deals is just asinine. Again, I ripped Houston apart for this. This is how you make sure your team never recovers, because you're going to have this team buy out with a coach who's already on the hot seat. And then you're going to see the whole thing just, fizzle away. And what we're going to see is a wide receiver who was on pace for some career records have his career completely die when he went to play for the Raiders. Unless he gets Tom Brady. I saw that's how that story went for Randy Moss. And I see that this could be the same repeat. So, Bob, I look at this team. I don't see, with the exception of their pass rush, a lot there on defense. And I see incongruentness on offense. And normally when you look at those combinations, the formula spits out about 6 or 7 wins.
Yeah, and I think on paper and with what we saw last year and with what the players they have this year, it doesn't seem like this team is going to compete for anything higher than third in the division. They're the team that I'm least hopeful for, actually, in that division. When we spoke about the Broncos, we stated that any team in this division could be between 2 and 4. Well, the exception is the Oakland Raiders, or the Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry, Oakland. I mean, the A's are going to be moving to Las Vegas as well. So, I mean, this is crazy times we live in. But when you look at the Raiders, one of the worst things that happened to the Raiders last year is that they had 11 losses by one possession. 11.
That's bad coaching.
They had 5 times last season where they blew a double-digit lead.
Worst coaching.
And so when I look at what the Raiders are as an organization, they did nothing to improve upon what happened to them last year. And because they didn't do those improvements, and you're sitting at a record of, what was it, 6-11 or something like that? Unlike what Kansas City did, it didn't feel like they improved upon much because the improvements that they needed to make were minor, and they lost the step on Brown. Well, unless we see a major jump in development in these players, we're going to pretty much, like you said, see the Las Vegas Raiders sitting down there at the bottom again, looking up and saying, what has happened to us? What happened to us from the year that we were fighting for the playoff spot? And I think what really sucks about this is that Josh Jacobs is a machine when he's healthy. This guy, and the Raiders' offensive line is good. and it's good at run blocking. It's good for Carr last year to get it down to Devontae Adams. There were plays being made. Now, granted, a healthy Hunter Renfrow in this team changes.
Oh, he's going to be the number one target. I mean, Jimmy doesn't run the ball on field.
Darren Waller's gone. And so you're sitting here and you're saying, okay, Darren Waller was basically gone last year too because he never really played. And so I'm sitting here looking at an offense with a quarterback that, typically speaking, doesn't design himself to be a downfield passer. And so that is where Carr excelled to the point where I'm just going to keep getting it to these guys. And if I can't, Jacobs is going to run the ball. Now, we saw when everything was firing correctly for the Oakland Raiders, which was 2 years ago, we saw what would happen to the Oakland Raiders. We saw a winning organization. Now, you come in and you say last year was a bad year. This year, the quarterback situation, if you have an unstable quarterback situation and you were already struggling before, I'm not saying Jimmy G is not a good quarterback. I'm just saying he's not a good quarterback for this team.
He's not. No, I agree with that.
And when you take the defense, who
he'd be a great quarterback in Houston.
Yeah, who last year was a bottom 5 defense for all intents and purposes in terms of yards per game. They only accumulated 27 sacks last year. Max Crosby is a beast. We all love Max.
Well,
Crosby.
I like Trey Wilson. I like the first.
Trey Wilson too. I'm not saying
I like that draft pick. I think that's going to really increase their sacks, but they ain't going to have a lead.
They're not going to have a lead, and the other issue is that their secondary hasn't improved, and/or it hasn't gotten better developmentally yet. So you're sitting at an organization that has drafted bad historically.
Well, on that note, Bob, the guys that would have developed, they let them walk away. Like they didn't even retain the ones that have been developed, like Rockey Sin. First off, bad draft pick. But still, if you're going to trust on someone developing, that's the kind of guy you have to.
So you're looking at an organization now that it's hard to be excited about. It's hard to be excited about the Raiders. They live in they exist in a bubble of excitement in Las Vegas. But the only reason I think that people show up to these games, at least in the recent memory, is loyalty to the brand, loyalty to the organization, and the excitement of Las Vegas. Hey, I can go see a football game while I drink and gamble. Yeah, let me go. Let me do that. And so there is vividly, I can see it on the field right now. We're going to look at the Raiders by midseason, and everybody's going to say, well, all right, whatever. Same old Oakland, or same old Las Vegas, same old Raiders organization. Disappointing. They started 2-7 last year. 2-7. What in the world? Like, how? And they ended up 6-11. So you saw an uptick in wins as the season went on because Jacobs caught fire and just carried the team. I mean, rushing for like 180 yards a game, it felt like most times. But the improvements of the organization, there's no market improvement. And despite Carr not being a great quarterback, I think he gave this team a better chance to win with their current makeup than Garoppolo does. And the defense, if it gets better, maybe we can see this team sneak into a second seed or second place in the division. But that's a big ask and a big if from what their schedule looks like and who they have to play. Because if you haven't changed your coaching staff and you've lost 11 games by one possession last year, and you lost by 5 times when you had the lead double digits, with your schedule this year, it's going to happen again. And you didn't do anything.
First coach fired.
Yeah. We could see that happening by midseason too. We could see if they start off another 2-7, 2-6, 1-7, whatever, we could see McDaniels being fired. 100%.
Yeah, and specifically, you look at the actual order of it. No one ever wins the first game in Denver, and then they go to Buffalo, host the Steelers, go to the Chargers, host the Packers, go to New England. You know, you got maybe 2 and 4 by the end of week 6. And, you know, then they get into a softer part of their schedule for a game or two, but then you get into another stretch that's Jets, Dolphins, Chiefs. You know, then it's your bye week. You might not have survived the bye week if you're sitting there with only 3 wins in week 13.
So out of all the teams in the AFC West, I think this is the team that has to do the most improving. And it's a team that, unfortunately, I think is going to get the short end of the stick in terms of how this shakes out for them in their conference. And I don't think we're going to be talking about them competing for a playoff spot. And I really do think they're most likely going to get another top 10, top 15 pick in the draft.
Well, top 10 for sure. Yeah, I think that's where we're looking at here. And will they be able to implode as hard as Arizona? No, but it's not going to be pretty. And you know, it's just the way it is.
Though, for the organization, because they can go out and get a quarterback.
Could have been, but they also, you know, well, there's too much wrong with the way that they're doing their contracts and running their front office since Gruden's been there. So, and then to go back to Gruden's era is 7 years ago now. You don't overcome that overnight. So, but the fact that they're continuing bad policies and bad practices does not give light for the future.
Yeah.
The bigger question is, which team do you see goes over 500 first? And I'm talking about years, ending the year over 500. These guys are Houston, because I think both of them at least 5 years out and 2 GMs later.
I would say the Raiders have more potential to go over 500 in the next 2 years than Houston does.
Well, that's true, because I firmly believe Stroud will never be an over 500 quarterback. He might never be an over 500 quarterback over any 5-game stretch of his career. So that's how I feel about the Ohio State quarterbacks that you guys all know and love. Nonetheless, guys, tomorrow's episode, those other teams I keep saying from the wrong city, San Diego Chargers.